Olá a todos, bem-vindos a mais uma conversa da Look Mag. Hoje estou com muita alegria, estou verdadeiramente contente porque tenho aqui comigo Duane Denison. O Duane é o guitarrista da banda Jesus Lizard, além de outras coisas que todos nós sabemos, mas é hoje sobre os Jesus Lizard que vamos falar um bocadinho por causa do novo disco que eles lançaram e do facto de eles virem a Portugal já no próximo verão ao Primavera Sound no Porto. First of all, Dwayne, it's an honor to have you here. You are one of the most icons on the guitar and on the music. So
Well, thank you.
it is a great honor to have you here. Thank you
Well,
so
thank you. Thank
much.
you, Sandra. I'm happy to be here.
I would like to ask you a little to come with me in a little travel to the past.
Okay.
And I would like to ask you to go to 1987 in Chicago and to tell me how did all began with Jesus Lizard?
Okay. So 1987, I wasn't in Chicago yet.
Mm,
We were still in Austin, Texas, and that's when we actually started. Um, or 88, 87 or 88. David Yow and David Sims were in a band, Scratch Acid, that I had seen, and my I was in a band called Cargo Cult, and we had played shows together and had some mutual friends. Um, So basically, when their band broke up and my band had already broken up, I approached them about getting something new started, and they were open to that idea, and we started working on songs, just the three of us and a drum machine back then. Um, and then those two guys moved to Chicago first. David Sims was playing with Steve Albini and Ray Washam in the poorly named group Rape Man. And um, David Sims kept in touch with me and kept saying, you should move up here. We'll get the group going. I don't think this other thing's going to last. Uh, he didn't say that, but I could kind of read between the lines. So that's what I did. And then we kind of picked up where we left off. Um, and then eventually invited Mac McNeilly, who was from Atlanta, Georgia, and he came up to Chicago, and then the four of us just kind of took it from there. This is around 1989.
1989. And what's the story behind the name Jesus Lizard?
Um, I don't think it ever really meant, it didn't mean a thing. It really had no meaning to us, but David Yow came up with it. We were kind of throwing names around and nothing that anyone really liked. And one day he came up and he said, the Jesus lizard. And it just seemed like an odd juxtaposition, just an odd pair of words to put together. But we all seemed to like it, and that's what we went with.
That was one of the first creatives inputs from David to the band.
Well, yeah, but he had already been writing lyrics
Yeah.
and things and had ideas about arrangements and things. So, but yeah, that was a big one, sure.
Now, 26 years old, you are releasing Wreck, the band 7th album. Do you think this work marks a new chapter in the story of Jesus Lizard?
Well, sure. It kind of reflects where we are and where we've all been for the past 20 something years. Anytime a band puts an album out, it's kind of a statement. It's a statement of where they are at that point, and it kind of reflects, what you're listening to, what you're into, um, what you like to play, what sort of I don't know if the word progress is right,
Mhm.
but what sort of evolution you may have made, either separately or together. Um, all those things. So sure, you could say it's another chapter.
Mm. And what are your feelings concerning the putting the album now into the world and expecting everybody to listen and to have the input from everybody, fans, critics, whatever?
Well, when the album came out, it was last year. It
Hmm.
was, I believe, in October,
October.
September or October. And so at that time, Well, it was kind of a different world, wasn't it? We
Yeah.
in the United States especially, we hadn't
Yeah.
had the presidential election yet. Um, and so now things are very different, and everyone's got other things on their mind, and people are worried. People are worried about the future and the present. Um, so I don't know what value. I agree. I don't necessarily know what value something like this has in the moment, other than it gives people maybe a little bit of hope that, well, those guys are still around and they still get along and they work together and they play shows. So if they can hang in there and keep going, maybe we can too. I guess that's about the most I could say.
Hmm.
On the one hand, our music has always been fairly aggressive, noisy, discordant, dissonant. But on the new album, there's a couple of more atmospheric things as well. Um, so I don't know how much of an escape it is. Music is often an escape for most people. For other people, it's a reflection of what's going on, and maybe we're both.
I have to ask you this because you talked about the elections and the new president that you have. Being here in Europe, all the things that we heard are coming from the news and from CNN and other TVs and radios and some newspapers also online. But we don't know what is happening in America because the only thing that comes out is everything about Ukraine and Russia and
Yeah.
Putin and everything about that. But this to ask you, the situation in America, it's do you think people that voted for Trump are regretting that they have done that? And if you would be writing the album now, after the election of this president, the album would be different? Because we don't know, we don't have the smallest idea what is going on in America.
Well, for one thing, it's here in America. I mean, it's been kind of overwhelming. Like almost every single day, there's something new that they're doing. Some of it is just spreading misinformation. Some of it
Yeah.
is them trying to change the rule of law. Some of it is doing things, firing workers, government workers, and then and not even replacing them, and it's just creating chaos. Um, so every day there's something new, and we can't keep up with it. And if you try to, it just drives you crazy.
Yeah.
Um, and in a way, that's part of what they want. They want people to be overwhelmed and feel powerless. But at the same time, I can only do so much. I can only follow so much of it, without getting worn out by it. Um, I think a lot of it is exactly that. It's just sort of smoke and mirrors and cover, but they're covering up other things that they're doing. So it's hard to keep up for us. I don't remember at any point in my life where it's ever been so chaotic. And I'm old enough that I remember the 1960s when I was a
Yeah.
child. I remember civil rights. I remember rioting. I grew up outside of Detroit. I saw the aftermath of riots and saw smoke and flames and all that. Um, but I've never seen it so chaotic as it is now. And I do think some Trump voters are regretting it. I absolutely do. Um, but and some of them are speaking up and letting people know. I think a lot of the politicians aren't doing enough. I think that a lot of the people on that side, people who are Republican or on the right wing, they don't like him either.
Oh,
But they're afraid of him.
they're
And
afraid of him.
they're afraid of their career if they speak up. So you're just getting the left-wing people are speaking up and having demonstrations and things, and that's good. Um, but I don't think I don't I don't think there's a whole lot more that we're getting than you're not getting. It just seems like
Okay. Just the
it's
same.
everywhere now. The news is
Every-
different now. You can listen to CNN or BBC or
Yeah.
whoever, and you're finding out the same things we're finding out. Maybe not quite as much detail. Um, yeah, I don't know. And as far as the album, I don't know if it would have affected our writing that much
Mm-hmm.
because musically, a lot of what this album is fast, aggressive, noisy, dissonant. It's all those things already.
All
It was
right.
already most of those things. So there isn't, I don't know how much more we could do without it would sound artificial and contrived.
Yeah.
Um, I suppose some of the lyrics could have been different, but as David Yow, who writes pretty much all of them,
Pretty
has
much.
pointed out, when you do those kind of political themed lyrics, they become dated very quickly
Yeah.
because things change quickly. And by the time that album is out and people are learning the song you're playing live, within a couple of years, things are different. Things change really rapidly. Unless you're speaking very generally, as well, like say the Clash would, or Billy Bragg would, or things
Really.
where, you know,
Yeah.
and I respect them too. And I respect them doing that. But I don't know. There's a little bit of that on our album. It's just not obvious. He's not naming names, put it
Ne-
that way.
that's a good choice to can put it on the head of some people. If they read something very straightforward, maybe they would run away. But it's not like straightforward. Maybe they think a little bit more about the situation.
Yes, you give their imagination room to
Yes.
participate.
Yes, yes. Dwayne, you are in other bands. One of those bands, it's kind of an icon here at home because my husband is absolutely fascinated with Tomahawk. So
Okay.
I have to ask you, when did you start feeling the desire to put your creative energy back in Jesus Lizard?
Um, oh, it was a while ago. So we broke up originally in 1999.
Yeah,
We had been together playing and recording about 10 years. And I think times had changed. For one thing, the musical climate in the US, Chicago, USA, the world
the
really
world. Yeah,
was different. And we were kind of out of steam at that point. We had kind of done everything together that we kind of felt like we could. And so we stopped. That was 1999. I moved down here to Nashville, did some other things, played some country and rockabilly and things, and then eventually started Tomahawk. So, but then in 2009, we did a reunion tour with the Jesus Lizard and we went around the world. And so the idea of doing new material came up then, but not everyone was fully on board with it yet. Um, so we kind of set it aside, and I had already I write new stuff fairly regularly. So the ideas I had at that time, well, it went to the next Tomahawk album, and that came out. And then we just kept playing more. The Jesus Lizard, we played some shows here in the States, 2017, 18, 19. And every time we would bring it back up, we sound pretty good. We still play pretty well. We get along most of the time. Why don't we think about it? And so those of us, basically me and David Sims, the bassist,
the basis.
we tend to write pretty much all the music. We just said, let's just keep writing. Let's just start working on new stuff. And eventually everyone will get on board. And we'll just say, hey, we're going to do this. Are you in or out? And that's basically what we did. And so the idea for doing new stuff has been there for a while.
Hmm, hmm. Did they accept immediately, come on board?
Oh, I did.
And the
Um,
others, besides Sims?
basically, we it took some prompting to get David Yow on board. But once he heard some of the stuff we were working on, once he heard that, he was like, "Oh yeah, of course, I'll do that."
It was hard for you to, and for Sims also, as you were writing before you joined all together. It was hard for you to approach the new stuff on the band, the new material on the band, but honoring all the story that was behind in the past. It was difficult for you, or it was easy. It's another step.
No, it wasn't. I don't think it was difficult to deal with. Obviously, we had a lot of albums out, and so
Hmm.
obviously at that point you have a certain legacy, a certain history that follows you. Um, but we weren't really afraid about that. We didn't have any fear. We felt like the new material was strong, and we felt, you know, um, we had grown, and what we were doing was more a valid representation of where we were at now. And some of actually, one of the songs, Lord Godiva, was something that we wrote back then,
Yeah.
but we never released it, and we kind of rearranged it and re-recorded it. And some of those basic ideas I think may have been around for a while, but then mo the majority was new. No, we weren't really afraid of that. We felt confident with the material was as good or better as anything we had ever done, and it's a question of perception.
It's a question of perception. Yeah, yeah. And I imagine your fans, when they heard it the first time, this new album, maybe they were expecting exactly the same, but it's the same, but more modern, more actual, right? Because you brought
Well,
everything that you've
big-
learned.
it's yes. Well, usually when you so we put a couple of singles out
Yeah,
before the album came out, and that's difficult because on the one hand, people are making I nowadays everything is on social media, so you can see people's comments immediately, and people were judging us just on they judge you off of one song, and
exactly.
they're like, "Oh, this sounds like it could be The Offspring, or this sounds like it could be that." I'm like, "Oh, come on. Get over it. This is one song, and it doesn't reflect everything. It doesn't, and you're already, projecting your own expectations on it. Just let us be ourselves. Like
Exactly.
we promise, we won't disappoint you. If you're disappointed, I don't know. I don't know what you want, but we can't. It would have been ridiculous and contrived to
Yeah,
try to sound like the old
of
to
course.
to deliberately try to sound like the old Jesus Luther. I think some of it does, and especially the production and the overall, just the way we play and the way we play together hasn't changed, but the material has. Um, it's still us. I think anyone anywhere, if you liked us back then and you could play any song on there and they would go, "Wait, I know who this is."
Of
Right?
course.
So to me, I never worried about that stuff.
Dwayne, I have to ask you, you have a long history in your career. You have a big experience in the music world. But as you said, everything's changed in the last years, and especially with social media. Is it hard for you? Don't you have urge to shut up everybody and go away? Because
Yeah.
I do when I see some things that
Yes, of
makes me
course.
mad.
Of course. And then I have to remind myself, don't don't do that. Don't read the comment. Don't read every comment.
Exactly.
Don't look at those things. But on the other hand, there's a certain amount of expectation that people want. If you've got an album out and you're going on tour, you need to maintain a certain amount of profile. And in order to do that, you have to post things and interact with things, and which I do. Um, So a certain amount of blowback is to be expected, but you can't let it bother you. And for the
Yeah.
most part, I don't. It doesn't bother me. Um, we play shows, and most of those shows are sold out. The majority of the reviews I've seen of the album are
They're
really good.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, really good. There's always going to be a certain percentage of people who don't like you or what you're doing. And that's never changed. It's always been there, and it'll never change. But I know what you're saying. There comes a point, I still want, like playing music. I still enjoy playing guitar. I still enjoy playing, music with other people. I enjoy getting in front of people and playing. I like recording all of it, giving lessons even. But I mean, the day will come when I do feel like, well, I will say that's enough.
Do you
I've
think
had
it?
enough. And
Do you?
you've had enough. There will come a point where I think people have had enough of me. I
Yeah.
think the world can get by without me.
No, I don't think so. No, 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 no. No, no, no. Do you think it was easier, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago to deal with these expectations from the fans and from the public and even from the press that was reading about you? It was easier?
No,
No.
I don't know. I don't think. No, I don't. I don't think it was any easier. I think if anything, it might have been more difficult because there were fewer sources.
Yeah.
There was fewer things. There was only a handful of certain influential magazines
Yeah.
or influential, even Chicago, local critics or critics in London, whoever. And so their opinions were considered the important
Yeah.
ones, and everyone else kind of reacted to them. Whereas now there's loads of opinion influencers everywhere you look, and it's kind of become blurred as to who's more important.
Yeah.
And now some of the ones that were important in the old days are gone.
Exactly.
And a lot of the people we worked with or dealt with in the old day are gone. They're not doing it, or they moved on, or they're dead, or whatever. Um, but no, I don't think it doesn't feel any different to me. You know, we would laugh. We would, if we, honestly, we would look at, if we saw bad reviews, we would read them to each other and laugh and joke about it. Hey, you need to do more like this guy says, you know. Hey, according to this guy, we're heavily influenced. You know, people talking about saying we're influenced by things we've never heard of. You know what I mean? Um, so no, it's no different. It's
It,
just the medium has changed.
the mediums. Yeah, exactly, exactly. When I listen to a track like What If, it makes me think that for me, it's the perfect example that the band is moving on, that the band is moving through the present, through the future, not throwing away the past. No, the past is there, but we are moving on. What inspired this song?
Um, I think, well, one of the things that happens to me when you're writing material for an album, when you're starting the beginning, that's the hardest part
Mm-hmm.
because you don't, it's like a blank slate. You're looking at this blank thing and you have to fill it up. So you have to start, and you start usually, we're a rock band, so we have rock ideas and things in that. Once you get a couple of, usually you write songs in groups, three or four
Mm-hmm.
songs at a time. We would get together and make demos, record rough versions. And once you've done that, then you can sit back and you can look at what you've got. Like maybe you've got a half dozen, so 6, 8 songs, and you're like, you know what? We need a really slow, why don't we do something slow and weird and different? Why don't we do something that has a different rhythmic groove? What if we had something that was quieter and slower and more atmospheric? And so we did that. And then David Yow was like, I don't really know. He didn't really know what to do with it. And then we said, why not just do more of a spoken word type thing? And then also there's some little vocal bits sort of saying, those kind of high atmospherics, like do that too. And he recorded that separately, and then we dropped those in. So I think it was just, we just kind of looked at what we had and said, you know, let's do something slow, let's something we don't have. And that's how that came about.
And it was difficult for you all together to compose and all the record, or not? It was easy.
Easy, I think.
Easy.
The music with this band, it's always been the music always tended to get done first. And
Okay.
then David, it always takes him longer to get the lyrics and vocal parts going. And this was no exception. This was the same. And he will usually, he takes a long time, and because he's very deliberate and he doesn't want to do things that are cliche or that everyone else is already doing. Um, but sometimes you can overthink things. Sometimes
Yeah.
doing something that's simple and direct is the best thing. So we had to kind of pull him along and push and pull. Um, but so typically the music is the easier part, and then getting the vocals and lyrics and vocals takes longer.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Did you bring something from your work in Tomahawk to Jesus Lizard on this
No,
record? No.
no, I keep those separate, very separate, even though there's not that big a difference in
No.
what I do
Yeah.
from one to the other. There really isn't. Tomahawk might be a bit more complicated and might be a bit more, there's a bit more, have a few more extremities to it because I know that's what makes it interesting to someone like
Yep.
Mike Patton.
Yep.
And also Trevor Dunn and John Stanier. They want challenging, things. They want it. They don't like, I don't think Mike Patton really likes straightforward rock music all that much. I don't think he does. So there has to be something kind of off or weird around it, and there has to be other little things thrown
Yeah,
in, whether it's a bossa nova feel,
yeah.
or whether it's a lounge music feel, or whether it's a old time R&B thing. You have to have these little oddities to keep him interested.
But not in Jesus Lizard. That's no.
Jesus Lizard, not so much. Jesus Lizard, we just rock out. We just play, we just rock out in our style. Like when we think of all the things that we like, and we try to do our version. To me, this is what a modern hard rock band should sound like.
Yeah.
It should be edgy and abrasive and corrosive sounding, but at the same time, and have a lot of rhythmic drive and energy. It should have different accents and things. And then the vocals have to ride on top of it in a
Mm-hmm.
certain way. It doesn't necessarily need, say, a traditional vocal melody like a traditional song. It could be like another instrument adding a part, um, which is kind of what he does. Um,
Yeah.
so no, so they are different. I
They're
approach.
different. You said before that the band split a few years ago, then come back, and then went on tour. But did you always felt that Jesus Lizard was a part of your life?
Yeah.
Was still in you, although you are on other bands, but it was still on you?
Um, I don't know about that. I mean, when I first moved here to Tennessee, I was playing with completely different people.
Yeah.
Hank Williams III and Bobby Bear Jr., these people, these country kind of people, even though it wasn't really traditional country necessarily. This rockabilly group, Legendary Shack Shakers, and then doing studio things. Um, I did not, people knew me as, hey, that's the guy, he was in the Jesus Lizard. And so people knew me from that, and that's fine. But at the time, I didn't consider myself part of it anymore. I thought we were done. And like in 1999, when I moved here, I thought we were done. That part of my life is
Was there.
done. And I kind of started over when I moved here, and I started over and I had different equipment, different everything. And I sold a lot of old stuff, and I thought that part of my life is over. I'm moving on now. And then it all came back, and then it came back again. So um, here we are.
Here we are. Do you like more Nashville or Chicago? I have to ask.
Um, there's things about both that are great. They've changed a lot. Nashville has become very crowded
Yep.
and busy and expensive, but Nashville, it's also, on the one hand, the cities in the South is more conservative and more right wing, and generally in the United States, but the cities aren't. The cities
Citizen.
are the cities are Democratic blue thing like Nashville, Memphis, Knoxville, Atlanta. Those are all very blue areas. Donald Trump did not win in these counties. He
Okay.
didn't.
Okay.
Um, so there's that. But Chicago, Chicago is great. It's just such a big city. There's so much going on all the time. Um, and Illinois is a great state. So they're just different. They're
Different.
just different.
Yeah. Through the years, Jesus Lizard has gained the reputation of being a band of the bands. I would like to ask you if you agree with that. And as we have many followers that are into the 19s music, although they are youngest, I would like you to remember and to tell us how did it happen the split that you recorded with Nirvana, with Kurt Cobain. He was a big fan of yours.
Oh, okay. I didn't catch the first part when you said the question.
Everybody speaks about Jesus Lizard as being one of the big bands, the band of the bands. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I don't know about that. I think when I think back, we've certainly held up well, and I
Yep.
think because of the internet, because people, and now it's kind of come back around where bands, well, like the Idols and people like that have said things about it. Other people have said good things about us over this, so we've held up, and I think our material, those recordings, have held up, um, because it was fairly straightforward. It wasn't relying on studio
Mm-hmm.
tricks and things like that. We weren't. it wasn't reliant on the production necessarily, which usually that's when music becomes dated, it's because the production usually sounds like it's stuck in a certain era. And maybe we do too in a way. But I'd like to think we were one of the influential bands from that period, sure, and maybe kind of important in that way. But when I think back to who in like the underground or what people called American punk rock, what was popular, it wasn't necessarily us. It was like Rancid and Green Day and Offspring and the West Coast things. And then somewhat the East Coast, say Sonic Youth and Dinosaur Jr. and things. I mean, the Butthole Surfers got big. Um, we were never up there as those, but it's funny, the higher you get, the farther you fall. And so we didn't get up that high, but we didn't fall very much. We've kind of stayed fairly level for a long time. In fact, my career is to me a classic example of, are you familiar with the
Mm-hmm.
long tail concept of things? Instead of a lot of things, they start off really high, they're big, but not for very long, and then it drops and they stay there. We never got that big. We were more mid, but we stayed there. We didn't fall a whole lot. We
Mm-hmm.
fell a little bit in the late 90s, but then we came back. So no, it's pleasant. Sure. I'd like to think we were one of the influential bands. Why not?
Why not? And can you tell us what happened with Kurt Cobain and Nirvana back then?
Yeah, we played 3 shows with them back in the day. To me, it was before, during, and after. So before they were famous,
Mm-hmm.
when they were still on Sub Pop, and we played with them in New York City. We played with them twice in New York and once in Denver. Um, but David Yow and Kurt got to talking, and in those days, split singles were not uncommon,
Yep.
like Sonic Youth and Mudhoney doing things. And so they floated that idea, and they wanted to do that, and we agreed to do it. And then it took a long time for it to actually happen. And then in the meantime, obviously they got signed to Geffen and they became the biggest band in the world. Um, but Kurt still, still said, hey, he told the record company, I still want to do this. I said I was going to do this and we want to do this. So they did it. And we ended up on a split single, um, which did well. It was like a limited, what, 100,000 or something. So, and they sold every one of them. So,
I imagine the price in disc dogs today.
oh, I know. I can't even think about that stuff. I have so many things from back then,
Yeah, I imagine.
picture discs and cassettes and things that I just gave away. I gave away to family and friends. And I used to when I gave guitar lessons, I would give people stuff. And I don't have a whole lot of it. On my shelf, I have a couple of each. Um, I kind of don't care.
You kind of don't care.
I kind of don't care. That's what it's for.
Yeah. Dwayne, looking back um, to the band history, do you have a point when you think was the most challenge time for the band when you came together or when you split back then?
Near when we were splitting toward the end, it was kind of unpleasant.
Yeah.
Our original drummer, Mac, had left, and that was a big blow. And I don't think there was anyone that could have replaced him. And we had a couple different guys. They did their best, but it was just never the same. And we kind of felt like we were just fulfilling a contractual obligation at that. We were signed to Capitol, and we had to make another album, which we did. And we got Andy Gill to produce it. And they were encouraging us to be different, do something different. The music scene was different too. Um, if you remember the second half of the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
you saw a lot of electronica was big and hip hop was
Yep.
big and the Britpop thing was big. And we weren't any of those things. We hadn't changed much. We still did what we did that made us popular the first half of the 90s. And so, but here we are now. And so the record label was telling us, you need to experiment more. You need to be different. So we tried. We were using a little bit more electronics and stuff and loops and things. and the old fans hated it. So we were kind of caught in between,
Yeah,
and it was difficult. And but we kept at it and we kept touring, even though now I'm starting to see the audiences aren't as big as they used to be. And that's hard. It's hard to keep you going when those things are happening. Um, so eventually we just said, okay, that's enough.
that's enough. And the
And then we
most,
took a break.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the
And now
most,
it's back. Now we're bigger than we were.
yes, you are. And the most I don't know what to say. Memorable moment on the band's life. Do you have a a special concert, a special, I don't know, something to give us
I don't know
that
about
special?
most memorable.
Yeah.
Probably playing probably in the mid 90s, I think 93 and 94
Hmm.
or so, when we would come to the UK and play those big festival, like the Reading Festival,
Yeah.
and then seeing ourselves in the weeklies at the time, NME, Melody Maker, things like that, and then having them whisk us off and being on TV or being put in a thing to sign autographs. And then flying around the world, going to Australia and New Zealand and going to these far-flung
Wow.
places. Um, it was, kind of a dream come true, really. And here we were, and we did it, and we did it without trying to be commercial,
Yeah.
by just doing our thing and sticking to it and trying to do the best possible version of our thing. We were able to do all those other things.
You have developed a quite reputation of being a live band. Now, with the comeback, shall we say like that, is there any difference on stage, or it's the same,
It's the same, maybe even better now in some ways.
more refined?
Yeah. But I think in some ways, even though obviously we're older, it's 30 years later,
Yeah.
but we're all in pretty good health and pretty good shape. Everybody works out and watches what they eat and drink and all that most of the time. Um, most of the time. We play as well or better. Obviously, there's a certain amount of wear and tear, and we all have aches and pains and things, and there's certain, tendonitis starts to show up, arthritis starts to show up. But we still do what we do, because we like it. And our shows we play, they're as good as ever. Maybe they're not as chaotic and not as crazy, but they sound better. I think we play better together. We're not as messed up as we were back then. Our singer is, but that's okay. That's okay. But he has to watch it sometimes. We have to watch him.
You have to watch him.
Yeah.
Duane, you are coming to Portugal on Primavera Sound next summer. What can we expect from that concert?
Um, you'll hear a little bit of everything.
Hmm.
New songs, old songs, everything in between.
And what do you expect from the Portuguese audience?
We expect nothing but love and adulation. We expect, I want the key to the city. I want, you know, I want love and love and respect. I want to be carried off on the shoulders of the brawniest lads in town into the sunset, where we'll be wined and dined
That's
to our
wonderful.
heart's content.
That
Am I expecting too much?
No, you're not. No, you're not. Because you deserve it. And we are very happy to have you here with us in Porto, and it will be great. Duane.
We're looking forward to it. And I'm not just saying this. I've been to Portugal several times.
Yeah.
I've always had a wonderful time, um, and looking forward to it.
I hope you have a nice life until you come to Portugal. I hope you have a wonderful trip here. All the shows before will be fabulous, I'm sure. But don't give everything to others. Keep something to Portuguese.
Yes, we'll save some.
You'll save some. And I hope to see you in Porto. And once again, thank you so, so much for being here. It was
Oh, you're
an
very kind,
honor.
Sandra. Thank you, Sandra. I'm happy to do
Thank
this.
you. Thank you.
Mhm. Bye.
Bye bye.